Good morning, I'm Rose Lee, and today we'll share some Florida history and facts of past hurricanes that hit our state, and tips to help you plan and prepare for this season to keep you and your family safe and protect your property from the ravages of Mother Nature. And hand washing and how you can prevent many diseases, even those contagious enough to take young lives. More when we return. Florida Fish and Wildlife lists black-tip shark, bonnet-head shark, bull shark, great hammerhead shark, lemon shark, nurse shark, and tiger shark as common species of sharks found here right in our Florida waters. For those shark enthusiasts, our next guest will entertain you with factual shark stories, combined with innovative research findings to better understand the most unique shark species in the world. I'm also excited to learn more from George Burgess, one of the top shark attack experts in the world, and the director of the University of Florida Program for Shark Research. George will offer insight into the world of sharks. Good morning, George.
Good to be with you.
George, tell us, how did you become a shark attack expert?
Well, I was drawn to sharks as a youngster, lived always near the coast, and was fortunate to be one of those kids that actually grew up to be what he wanted to be. And so I was fortunate in that. Once I got into sharks, obviously shark attacks a phenomenon that draws a lot of interest from the public as well as from scientists. And so it was sort of a natural that I got into it since I was living in Florida, which is the shark attack capital of the world.
George, you have a unique way of documenting sharks through your Shark Attack File. Tell us about this file.
Sure. The International Shark Attack File is a compendium of investigations of shark attacks of the world, going back as far as we can go back. And our earliest attacks were in the mid-1500s. And each attack that occurs anywhere in the world, we investigate, much like the police investigate a crime. And the idea of all this is to get the factors involved in shark attack from the perspective of both the human and the shark and the environment. And by looking at thousands of these cases, we're able to see patterns which allow us to offer some suggestions as to how to reduce the risk.
So you remind people that there is a ratio that is surprising about shark attacks. What is that?
Absolutely. On average, in the recent decade, about 6 people die a year in the mouths of sharks. By contrast, we're killing anywhere from 30 to 100 million sharks a year in fisheries. So you make a ratio of that, and it's more than 10 million to 1 sharks dying for every human dying as a result of a shark. So it's pretty clear who's the attacker and who's the victim in that relationship.
So what makes the Atlantic coastline of Florida so attractive to sharks?
First of all, it's got nice warm waters. It's subtropical to tropical waters. It's a very long coastline. If you stretched Florida's coastline up the East Coast, you go all the way up to New York or southern New England, so it's a large coastline. We have a large population, of course, in Florida, the third largest population in the country. None of us live more than an hour and a half away from the water, one way or another, either the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. And of course, we have the largest tourist population of anywhere else in the world. So put all that together, and it means we've got lots of people in the water, in waters that are nice and warm, that are attractive to sharks, and so we're going to have more of these incidents.
Why are we seeing more shark attacks in the U.S.?
We're seeing more sharks in Florida and in other places around the U.S. in part because fishery management measures that have been put into effect by both federal and state governments have slowed the decline, which we had seen for years, and some of these populations are beginning an upward return to recovery. And so we're seeing more sharks because of that, but we're also seeing more because we as humans are out there taking pictures and posting things in social media. So sharks don't get away as easy as they used to.
what's being done to protect and manage the shark population throughout the U.S.?
The key is that overfishing has been the problem for shark populations around the world, not just in Florida. And of course, the situation in Florida is tied heavily to other areas around the southeastern United States because sharks are highly migratory. They move from one place to another and they don't honor state boundaries. So federal regulations have addressed sharks on the whole Atlantic seaboard. Within the state of Florida, the nearshore sharks have been addressed by the FWC, the Game and Fish Commission, which both have set catch limits, and those catch limits have effectively stalled that downward decline and, in fact, have allowed certain species, such as blacktip sharks, to begin recovery.
How can we increase public awareness of how to avoid a shark attack?
Well, first of all, we need to understand that when we enter the sea, it's a wilderness experience. It's not like going into our backyard pool. And anytime we enter a wilderness, we know that there's a certain risks that are associated with entering that wilderness. If we go to Africa, we know that there's lions and cheetahs and elephants that can do us harm. If we go to the Rockies, we know there's mountain lions and bears. So we accept risk when we enter the sea. Obviously, we know we can drown. And there's things such as jellyfish that can sting us, or stingrays that we step on, or the occasional shark that bites us. And so we have to accept those risks. That said, once we know that we're going to accept a risk, our next step is how are we going to reduce those risks? And through education, in programming, just like we're doing right here, we try to get the message out to humans. How do we reduce those risks? And certain things we can do that. For instance, stay together in groups. Don't go in the water between dusk and dawn when sharks are most active. Avoid areas such as inlets and channels where sharks tend to aggregate. And obviously get out of the water if you see sharks or schooling fishes or fishermen are fishing.
All right, George, tell our viewers what they could do if they are in an unavoidable attack.
Well, obviously the first thing is if you're being attacked, get out of the water if you can. That's always the final thing that we want to do is get out of the water. But that said, if a shark is approaching you in an aggressive way, I advise to smack it on its snout. More times than not, the shark will swerve out of its way if you get them on the nose, and again, you try to get it out of the water. But that said, the nose is located very close to the mouth, so be careful that you're accurate when you swing at them. Finally, if you're actually in the mouth of a shark and being bitten, the eyes and the gill slits, which are located just behind the eyes, are both very sensitive areas. And if you probe those areas with your fingers, you might get the shark to let go of you.
All right, George, share some exciting Shark Fest facts.
Oh, there's a variety of different shows that are being offered on individual sharks, such as tiger sharks, and on hammerhead sharks. There's shows addressing certain phenomena, such as why some sharks tend to aggregate together at certain places. And there's a variety of other shows that are addressing shark conservation and sort of debunking some of the myths.
Ah, the amazing world of sharks. Thanks, George, so much for joining us this morning and sharing all of your shark expertise to help us better understand sharks and why they attack.
Good to be with you.
Hurricane season for the Atlantic coast begins June 1st through November 30th of every year. 27 years ago, Hurricane Andrew made landfall as a Category 5 storm, devastating many areas of Miami. For hours, Andrew tore off roofs with 175-mile-per-hour winds as a Cat 5, the highest category on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Andrew was one of 3 Category 5 hurricanes to hit the U.S. and the first since Hurricane Camille in 1969. Andrew moved fast, tearing through South Florida in the middle of the night, leveling neighborhoods, tossing around boats and mobile homes, and leaving millions without power or hope. Personally, Hurricane Andrew was my greatest educational achievement. As a young reporter, I was fortunate enough to take on a volunteer position with Miami-Dade Video Service Unit, working Alpha Bravo shift with county and local first responders. Later, I earned a master's in broadcast journalism, but Hurricane Andrew was my greatest education by living out a real-life disaster, hands-on. This Andrew devastation shut down communication in the area, including law enforcement and public servants who lost their homes and their communication with their spouses and their children during this devastation. The most hurricane-prone states in the U.S. are Virginia, New York, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, Louisiana, Texas, and Florida. Since 1851, Florida experienced a direct hit of 110 hurricanes, with 35 hits as major storms. According to the National Weather Service, Florida is the #1 most hurricane-prone state, with 40% of U.S. hurricanes making landfall. After a storm, local, state, and federal agencies will be on hand to assess the damages as FEMA staff come into the community. Last year, the hurricane season arrived early, with its first storm of the season in May. Hurricane Alberto arrived in May as it developed near the Yucatan Peninsula as a subtropical cyclone. The storm reached its peak intensity of 65 miles per hour before dry air caused Alberto to weaken and make landfall near Laguna Beach in Bay County, Florida. The traveling storm also passed over Cuba, eastern U.S., and Canada. Alberto caused 18 fatalities and $125 million in damages. Later in last year's hurricane season, in October, Hurricane Michael made landfall as a Category 5 and left behind $25.1 billion in damage from winds up to 160 miles per hour. The wind and storm surge caused catastrophic damage from Panama City Beach to Mexico Beach to Cape San Blas to landfall at Tyndall Air Force Base. The base was left littered with twisted metal and torn away rooftops and hangars. Tyndall is one of the nation's largest Air Force bases and is a key location which sits next to the Air Force testing and training range over the Gulf of Mexico. Tyndall is now rebuilding to be the air base of the future. The rebuilt base will be resistant to storm surges and wind speeds of up to 180 miles per hour and is expected to cost $3 billion. If you live in a coastal area, be proactive and be prepared. For most of us seasoned Floridians, we know what to do. But start by clearing your patio furniture off your decks. Park your cars stacked closely. Follow a hurricane preparedness checklist and wait for the storm to pass before going outside. After the storm passes, local and county officials will help assess damages and know if your area is hit hard. FEMA impact teams follow. They begin assessing damages. There are FEMA's distribution centers ready to serve in strategic areas close to landfall areas. The centers are pre-staged with food, water, tarps, and other commodities that are boxed, palletized, wrapped, and ready to ship those items to impacted areas via bridges, trucks, and barges around the clock, coordinating with emergency operations and local agencies. So, plan and prepare for your family and business. Go to floridadisaster.org/plan-prepare. Summer lifestyle is filled with on-the-go activities with kids, family, and friends. But one thing is for sure, kids will bring home germs. And illnesses shared with their playmates, from a play date to a trip to the nature park. Germs are everywhere. Even if we're playing in our own backyard with friends and our pets, we will be bringing in germs into our household. So how can we avoid spreading these diseases? Well, the Center for Disease Control has a healthy reminder. Michelle Helavasa is an epidemiologist at the CDC with an important health reminder that will help stop spreading disease.
Hand washing is one of the most important ways you can keep from getting sick and spreading germs to others. Dirty hands spread disease. This hand washing demonstration will show you how hand washing can get rid of germs and chemicals that get on our hands every day. This gel is like the germs and chemicals that we get from things we touch throughout the day, like our toys and pets. If we then rub our eyes, nose, or mouth, or pick up something to eat, the germs or chemicals can get into our bodies and make us sick. Studies have shown that people touch their eyes, nose, and mouth about 25 times every hour without even realizing it. To get rid of these germs and chemicals, CDC recommends you follow these easy steps every time you wash your hands. Wet, lather, scrub, rinse, and dry. We're going to show you the right way to do each step. First, wet your hands with clean running water. Turn off the tap and apply soap. Then, lather your hands by rubbing them together with the soap. Be sure to lather the backs of your hands, between your fingers, and under your nails. Scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds. If you don't have a clock nearby, keep scrubbing until you've sung the happy birthday song twice. Rinse your hands well under clean running water. Dry your hands using a clean towel, electric hand dryer, or air dry them. Washing your hands using the steps we just demonstrated is very important to get hands completely clean. Let's see how well we got rid of the germs and chemicals. Great. No more germs and chemicals. Why is this so important? Germs and chemicals from unwashed hands can get into our foods and drinks when they're being prepared or when we're eating or drinking them, which can make us sick. Also, germs and chemicals from unwashed hands can be transferred to other objects like cell phones, tabletops, or toys, and then transferred to other people's hands. That's why it's so important to wash your hands following these steps. Wet, lather, scrub, rinse, and dry, so you can stay healthy and help keep those around you healthy.
For more information, visit cdc.gov/hand washing. Anyone at any age can contract meningococcal meningitis, but teens and young adults are among those who are at the highest risk of infection due to teens' common lifestyles and behaviors of socializing in crowded conditions. The Center for Disease Control recommends that preteens 11 to 12 years old should be vaccinated with the meningococcal vaccine, in addition to the older teens who are 16 years old who need a second shot so they can stay protected against their higher risk factor. Joining us this morning is pediatric immunization expert Dr. Todd Wolin and meningitis survivor Francesca Testa to share the importance of the 16 vaccine campaign. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How needed is this critical vaccine that young students don't realize how quick and deadly meningococcal meningitis can be? Can you share some statistics?
Sure. The meningitis bacteria can hit up to, we can see 600 to 1,000 cases per year in the U.S. The critical piece is how rapid and how deadly this bacteria can be. So you can go from mild symptoms to fighting for your life within as little as 24 hours, Rosalie.
Tell us about the importance of the 16 vaccine campaign.
Yeah, so the critical part about this is that the first dose, as you pointed out, for the CDC recommended vaccine to get it at age 11 to 12 is frequently received, oftentimes because it's part of school entry. So parents know about it, kids know they need their form signed, doctors are used to giving it. But even though this is also a CDC recommended, safe and effective recommended vaccine for age 16, there's not that hallmark moment to get it, and oftentimes it falls through the cracks. And then you're left with a person who is unvaccinated for that second dose, not giving them the protection, as you pointed out, to when there's really critical risks, like living in close quarters, say in college dormitories, as they get into their later teens and early 20s, and because of the types of behaviors of sharing fluids, drinking, kissing, this bacteria can be spread. And if they don't have that the 16-year-old dose, they're left susceptible, and we want to protect every kid that we can.
You know, some parents are unaware of how deadly this disease can be.
Right. So the scary thing, again, with this rapid nature is it may start with vague symptoms and it may be misdiagnosed, and Francesca will share her story. But absolutely, you can have a fatality rate, even once it's appropriately diagnosed and appropriate antibiotics are started, of 10 to 15% fatality rate, even if appropriate measures are taken. And if the bacteria gets into your bloodstream, you're looking at a fatality rate as high as 40%.
Francesca, you were diagnosed with the flu. Tell us about this horrific misdiagnosis.
Yes, so what initially started off as typical flu symptoms, about 24 hours later progressed rapidly to where I was in a coma for about 2 weeks. I woke up one morning with typical flu symptoms. I had a high fever, headache, stiff neck, severe body aches, and I did go to my local pediatrician, where they did initially diagnose me as the flu. And so within 12 hours, there was such a rapid progression of my symptoms that by the time I did get to the intensive care unit that evening, my parents were given about a 20% chance that I may survive the night, and that my right leg may have to be amputated at that point. And even though I did survive, and I'm here, speaking with you today. I do still live with long-term complications from having bacterial meningitis. I do still have hearing and vision loss and some cognitive delays and impairment, as well as severe headaches. And I was only about 2 months shy of having gotten that vaccine. So at the time I contracted bacterial meningitis, I was not vaccinated. And that's why it's so important. Mm-hmm. So important for doctors, for doctors to recognize the symptoms, but for parents to be their teen's advocate as well, and speak to their doctor and to make sure that they do get that second dose at age 16.
So Francesca, how old were you when you contracted this disease?
I was 17. I was just finishing up my senior year in high school, and really looking forward to college and graduation and prom, and really all that changed in as little as 24 hours.
Francesca, how did this impact your group of friends at school and your family after contracting this disease?
So, everyone, including my friends, my family, my siblings, even our community and the school system at large in my town, everyone, of course, was nervous and worried because, meningitis is something that can spread and something that is contagious. And of course, my friends and parents having to see me, in a hospital bed on a respirator in a coma and not sure, if I would survive or if I would pull through, that's devastating for both my friends and family, and something that, I would never want any other family to go through, any other parents, any other child. And this is something that could have been prevented had I been vaccinated.
So, doctor, how rare is it that these symptoms can develop as rapidly as they did for Francesca and could possibly claim a young life in 24 hours?
Yeah, that's the scariest part about this bacteria. It's not that rare for it to be able to progress so quickly. That's one of the hallmarks about this disease. So in Francesca's case, went from some fever, some body aches, to severe body aches, severe headache, high fever, and then, as she pointed out, within 12 hours of having been seen by a doctor or diagnosed with flu, went on to then having to be admitted into a hospital and then into a intensive care unit on a ventilator and in a coma for 2 weeks. So that's the key point about this bacteria. it can go from 0 to 60 like this. And so the beautiful thing is we have a safe, effective vaccine that can prevent this. And so again, with the first dose at 11 to 12, but that second dose at age 16, which is why we're thrilled to be part of the National Meningitis Association's campaign here, with more information on their website as well, the16vaccine.org, to inform families, kids, and doctors if they need some additional information on it.
Francesca, your experience created a unique advocacy opportunity as a survivor to raise awareness of preventing meningococcal disease. How do you initiate the conversation with teens to go out there and visit their doctor once they're 16 and make sure they receive that second dosage?
Since I've had bacterial meningitis, I've been working with local communities, states, and even nationally to really try to share my story and to share the message that this is something that is potentially preventable with a vaccine. I've been working with the National Meningitis Association for quite a few years. I do currently also have my master's in public health, which I was inspired to get, since surviving bacterial meningitis and having that story and being able to connect with teenagers who are the same age as when I contracted it. I think that message is really powerful, and just trying to make sure that everyone knows that the vaccine is out there and that it is something that they should get at age 16 as part of the second dose. And there's also other immunizations in this age range as well that parents need to talk to their teen's doctor about, including the meningitis B vaccine.
Doctor, what are some of your best resources to learn more?
Yes, it's the16, so the16vaccine.org. So the16vaccine.org, and the National Meningitis Association has wonderful resources to educate families and kids and even professionals if they want that information. It's a really great site.
Thank you, Dr. Wolin and Francesca, for joining us this morning to increase awareness of this deadly disease.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mentoring opens doors for students and job seekers with disabilities. Open the door to an all-inclusive workplace. Watch the upcoming episodes of Disability Mentoring and get involved in your community. Be a mentor. Life is filled with unexpected challenges and critical health issues, so it's important to have a plan to ensure we have the resources to protect our health and our property. From inside our home to our exterior environment, planning our family's food, energy, and water consumption will help us survive a hurricane. Share with us your plan to protect your family and property this summer at facebook.com/Rose Lee Show. And follow us on Instagram at The Rose Lee Show. And watch this episode and many others 24/7 at RoseleeArcherShow.com. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you soon.